Over 12 years, no water. So how you make out?
Why do you want to see that?
Huh? How much you pay for a tank?
Some people 5,000.
And every when you gotta buy water?
Sometimes 2 times a week. Because washing is take up a lot of water. You gotta do laundry.
So you're looking at $10,000 a week.
Yeah. And calculated by the month, it's a lot.
Wow.
At least 8 years.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We are diving into a stack of material that highlights a truly severe crisis in Prosville over in the Linden region.
Yeah.
And the core issue we're really tackling is the denial of a basic human right access to water for hundreds of families.
And it's been going on for, what, well over a decade now.
A decade.
And our mission today is really to analyze this just mind-boggling disconnect.
Right.
You've got the immense national wealth of this country. I mean, we're talking a multi-trillion-dollar budget, and the sources say something like 2 billion Ghana dollars every single day just from oil revenue.
Every day. And you put that next to a community where people are forced to live without the most basic infrastructure. We have to figure out how a failure of governance on this scale is even possible.
And here's the paradox, the part that just jumps right off the page.
Yeah, tell me.
This community has been living for 12 years without piped water, even though the main water treatment plant, the main supply pipe, and this is a direct quote, right over the road.
It's literally across the street.
That geographical irony, it's the perfect visual for this whole crisis. So we're going to explore the staggering financial cost that this community is forced to pay just to survive, and also, maybe most critically, the claims that this isn't about budget or logistics.
No.
It's tied directly to voting patterns, what the residents themselves are calling petty politics.
So let's start right there with the day-to-day reality. I mean, we're talking about 332 households. That's over 1,500 people. What does life actually look like when you've gone 12 years without the basics?
Well, the sources, they paint a picture of just a relentless struggle. For over a decade, no piped water, no electricity infrastructure.
So not there.
Not there. And water, of course, is absolutely essential, not just for drinking, but for everything, cooking, cleaning. The source material even calls out contaminated chores.
What does that mean exactly?
It seems to refer to chores for sanitation or, dealing with water that might already be dirty. It highlights this constant battle against disease, against poor hygiene.
And because the pipes aren't there, they're forced into this private system with trucks delivering water.
Right.
The financial burden of that, I mean, it's almost impossible to imagine if you live somewhere with a functioning tap.
It is. It basically creates a captive market. So a single tank of water, that costs $5,000.
$5,000.
And a lot of households, especially if you have a bigger family or, say, regular laundry, you might need 2 tanks a week.
So you're looking at up to $10,000 a week just for water.
Just to survive.
$10,000, if we just, run those numbers, that's $480,000 a year.
And the residents did the math themselves. They calculated that over 30 years, they'd spend something like $6 million just on buying water.
$6 million. They're funding their own inefficient private system instead of the public works they're supposed to be entitled to.
And here's where the social context gets really critical. The sources note that a lot of these residents are 10-day workers.
Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know, what does that term mean?
These are typically people on short-term government contracts, sometimes politically managed. The income is very minimal, very precarious. The salary that's cited is around $40,000 a month.
Wait, hold on. If water can cost up to $40,000 a month and the salary is $40,000 a month,
Exactly.
then your entire income is gone just on water, nothing for food, for housing, for medicine.
Precisely. It puts them in this impossible financial vice. They're in a state of severe economic dependency, perpetually under pressure. I mean, that $480,000 a year is completely unsustainable. But what choice do they have?
It really makes you realize that the cost of laying that pipe, even if it was a lot of money like an official claimed, it would be so much less than the financial pain inflicted on these people for over a decade.
Dramatically less.
So with that staggering reality in mind, let's pivot to the national contradiction here, the part that's truly infuriating.
The geography.
The geography. You mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, it completely undercuts any excuse.
Yeah.
The official line that running the pipe into the community would cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
It just doesn't hold water, pardon the pun.
Right.
The plant is literally right there. across the road. We're talking about a relatively short stretch of pipe.
And you contrast that tiny local expense with the national treasury, a multi-trillion-dollar budget, 2 billion Ghana dollars coming in daily from oil.
And the whole idea that they can't afford it just becomes, well, it's indefensible.
It stops being about costs.
And starts being about political will.
Yeah.
Or the lack of it.
And what emerges from these documents is the claim that this isn't just incompetence. Residents, they allege it's deliberate wickedness.
Wickedness, that's a strong word.
It is. The argument in the sources is that when the government distributed black storage tanks to residents instead of installing pipes,
Yeah.
that was a cynical, deliberate move.
How so?
It forces people to pay a private delivery guy every week to fill that tank. And by doing that, as one source put it, you keep them in poverty, you keep them dependent. You're turning a human right into a private regressive tax that benefits someone else.
Exactly. And that dependency, it feeds into this broader complaint from Linden residents. You have all these resources, gold, bauxite, lumber, being extracted from their area.
And yet the people who live there are forced into what the sources rightly call inhumane conditions.
A huge imbalance between what's taken out and what's put back in.
Which brings us directly to the political dimension. This seems to be the core driver of this whole 12-year situation. What do the sources say specifically is the motivation here?
The residents are very, very explicit. They claim they were promised water and light if they voted for the ruling party.
A classic political promise?
But because the community didn't get the water vote, meaning they didn't deliver the votes that were expected, the services were denied.
So it's retaliation.
They describe it as vindictive behavior, pure petty politics.
And the sources really hammer this point home, right? That a government is supposed to serve the whole country, not just the people who voted for them. Using basic services as a punishment, it just violates that entire social contract.
And it seems to go beyond just infrastructure. The sources give concrete examples of how this alleged victimization extends into people's personal lives, their jobs.
What?
There's this detailed testimony about a young woman who supported the opposition. She was allegedly victimized, and that means removed from her 10-day job right after she complained about the attitude of a supervisor at the Regional Democratic Council, the RDC.
And that supervisor was a member of the ruling PPP party.
That's the claim. The RDC is the local body in charge of these decisions, so if a party controls those supervisory jobs,
They can weaponize them.
it means the very system that's supposed to provide services is allegedly being used to punish political dissent.
It sounds like an environment designed to just crush any kind of opposition. The source docs also mention that other workers were leaving that group because of this one supervisor.
Which signals a deeper structural problem. It wasn't just a one-off. Even a local host who tried to intervene at the RDC claimed he was victimized afterwards.
It's a chilling effect.
It is. And this whole cycle, this feeling of political control and unfairness, it connects to something else mentioned in the sources.
What's that?
The need for systemic reform. They specifically bring up the EU report and its recommendation for biometrics in voting.
Because biometrics are seen as a way to fight claims of electoral fraud and rigging.
Right. So the inability to get water is all tied up in this much bigger existential conversation about the fairness of the entire democratic process that puts these people in power in the first place.
So if this is the alleged pattern punishing voters, prioritizing control, what do the sources tell us about the government's public priorities? Because there's a really sharp contrast being drawn.
Absolutely. You see the government reportedly boasting about these massive projects like building a new stadium, while at the same time, they're refusing to provide basic necessities like water and light to communities that already exist.
So image over substance, spectacle over human development.
And the sources allege this trickles right down to specific infrastructure decisions that benefit the powerful.
They give examples, right? Contrasting ministerial areas with Prosville.
Yeah, one claim is about the Minister of Natural Resources, Vikram Bharat. Allegedly has a big house, and there are solar lights right out front of his property, while the streets around it are dark.
And there's another one about the Minister of Agriculture.
Zulfikar Mustafa. The claim there is that he went from a small wooden house in 2020 to a big mansion with a swimming pool. And the sources point out that his street is wider and better developed than the streets in the community we're talking about.
It suggests resources are flowing preferentially to the political elites.
And the feeling among residents is that this is just backward behavior. When new homes are built, they're handed keys to a house with no water, no roads, no light.
So it all comes down to this one stark conclusion. The sources frame this entire 12-year saga as a clear human rights violation.
It is. But what's really tragic is how normalized it's become. One source says the population has become so accustomed to this that we don't realize how much of a problem it is.
When the denial of a basic need becomes normal, that's a profound failure of governance.
And it's not just water and light. The sources also point to other failures. They link to this same political malice.
Wait, what else?
Issues with roads being damaged by uncovered trucks, contamination risks at the hospital compound, and then there was the stoppage of the annual Christmas toy drive for 20,000 nursery kids.
Which residents also blamed on wickedness and petty politics.
It's a consistent picture. Basic community well-being is constantly being sacrificed for political fights.
So to summarize this deep dive, we've looked at the extreme financial strain on these Linden residents, paying up to $10,000 a week for water, which is just impossible on their income.
We contrasted that with the nation's staggering oil revenue.
And we highlighted that shocking irony of a water plant being literally right over the road. But most importantly, we've detailed these persistent specific claims that this 12-year denial of service is a direct result of political retaliation.
And what the sources suggest is that real change. It rarely comes through the proper channels. It only happens when the opposition or citizens use social media to publicly embarrass the government.
So public shaming is more effective than democratic accountability.
That seems to be the only mechanism that forces them to act.
Which brings us to our final thought for you, the listener. The source material has this really powerful quote. "You will never find justice in a world where criminals make the rules." So given the financial costs we've documented, the contrast with national wealth and these detailed allegations of political motives, what collective action, beyond voting or shaming on social media, is required for a population to reclaim rights they feel have been so systematically violated? That's something to consider as you reflect on governance and accountability in your own community.